Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Mindy Chadwell, Assistant Professor and Licensed Psychologist with Munroe-Meyer Institute. I'm here to talk with you as part of our Offering Family Support During Crisis series about reducing family stress and increasing coping. As you all are very well aware, as a community, as a nation, and as a world, we have entered a period of significant change and uncertainty. With that change and uncertainty likely comes difficult thoughts, feelings, increased stress, worry, and anxiety. Many of us may be feeling like this in this picture, with our lives moving so quickly we feel we can't catch up. Or we may be feeling like this as we transition to balancing new roles, such as educating our children from home. These feelings, these thoughts, and these experiences are all very common during this time of uncertainty. And that makes sense. There's a lot going on. We might have worries about health and the health of our family members. We may be struggling financially due to a wide variety of reasons. We might be trying to continue schooling for our children, now in a very different context. We're trying to distance ourselves socially, which makes us feel isolated. We might have worries about our household supplies or medical supplies and whether our hospitals are going to be overrun. We might also have worries about the health of society and our world. Throughout all of this, we might also be experiencing grief for a variety of reasons. We might be grieving the graduation ceremony or wedding that was canceled. Many of us might also be grieving the loss or death of loved ones. So this is really, really heavy stuff. And it makes sense that we would have a stress response in this situation. There is one thing that is common among all of these stressors, and you probably guessed it. That these things are outside of our control. These are not things that we can control. So the first step in managing our stress is to recognize that it's there. We can't manage it if we don't know that it's there. So here's a list of common stress responses. These can be applicable to adults as well as children, and are things that you can start to recognize in yourself as well as your little ones or your not so little ones, for those of you that have adolescents or older children. Key behaviors to recognize in young children, or children who are not verbally fluent and can't express that they're feeling stressed, would be these emotional and behavioral responses. So young children may exhibit more irritability. They may appear more emotional and may have more difficulty controlling their emotions. You might also recognize disturbances in sleep, with increased difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, as well as more resistance to going to bed. Once we recognize that we're having stress or having more stress than usual, we can start to implement strategies to help ourselves and our families cope. I would actually recommend even starting to do these things prior to noticing some of those signs, as part of a way to prevent some stress from occurring. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, yes, I know I'm stressed out. What do I do about it? And I wish I had a magic wand to take all of that away, but just like you, these things are outside of my control too. But there's some strategies that we can use to try to reduce that stress and cope with it. So remember how I described all of the things that are outside of our control. Well, what we want to do is focus on those things that are within our control. So within our mind and body, so we want to focus on these things that are in our control. We can control our thoughts. We can control what we put into our bodies. So try to channel more helpful thoughts, or consider keeping a gratitude journal. Trying to replace some of the junk food and sugary drinks or alcohol with more nutritious food and water. Work as hard as we can to ensure that we're getting enough sleep each night. While you may not have to shower daily or change out of your pajamas, try to maintain self-care and personal hygiene just like you would if you weren't quarantining. Within our immediate environment, there are some things that we can control. We can control when we leave our homes and go out if necessary. We can control to some degree the number of people that we come in contact with. For some of us, we might be able to control working from home. That might be an option that we have. We can control some of the things that we consume. So this is things that go into our body, like I mentioned earlier, but also related to information. So rather than checking the news all the time or having the news feed on our social media, we can distance ourselves from that. We can control how we consume information, making sure that the sources are credible sources and reliable sources such as the CDC. We can also consider surrounding ourselves with more positive media, such as movies and TV shows that we enjoy. These can be helpful in reducing stress. We can control how we protect ourselves and how we protect others. So things like regularly washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, avoiding touching our faces, and keeping our distance from others. So what I welcome you to do is to consider using the THRIVE acronym for coping with stress. The first step is to take notice of your thoughts and feelings. So this is where we recognize and take notice of how we're doing with stress. What difficult or what unhelpful thoughts might be coming up for you. Next, for H, we consider looking at the here and the now. You may have heard the term mindfulness before. For those of you that have not heard that term before, this is being in the present moment. So take time to take a deep breath and ground yourself in the present moment. Engaging in various activities for relaxation can be important here as well. Jot down a list of things that you find relaxing so that you have it to refer to when needed. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll also provide resources that are free and available for helping with channeling the here and the now. So the R is for reaching out for support. While we practice social distancing, it can be really hard to maintain those social relationships, leaving us feeling isolated. Give a friend a phone call, step outside and wave to your neighbor, or have a conversation from a distance. If you have access to technology, consider using Zoom or Skype or FaceTime to talk with others. I is for identify actions that are within your control. So this goes back to the list that I provided on the previous slide. So look for those things in life that we do have control over now, and we'll focus on those things. V is for values. So think about what's meaningful to you. And how can we incorporate more of that into our lives? For some, it may be family. For others, it may be religion and spirituality. For others, it may be health. But think about those things and how can we shift our focus onto those things that are most meaningful. The last one here is E, for encourage and evaluate. So this is for providing yourself with compassion and encouragement, and to really just check in with yourself on how you're doing. While we are learning to cope with what's going on in our new normal and trying to find a new normal, so are our children. So the steps in THRIVE can also be taught and modeled to children, even at very young ages. Increase communication with them, check in on their understanding of what's going on. You might find our series on talking with your child about COVID-19 helpful for having some of these conversations. Work to develop a flexible schedule and routine. Children, as well as adults really thrive on routines and schedules. So identify a schedule that works for your family, work to implement it and stick with it. We want to shift our focus as a family to mental wellness. So we need to focus as families on how we can not only get through this pandemic, but how can we thrive during this time. Make sure to schedule time for family fun and relaxation. Make a list of things that can be done together for fun as a family. It could be going for a nature walk or ride. It could be something like bird watching, or digging in the dirt to see what creatures we can find in the dirt, or how different textures feel. It could also be a family movie night. Get creative and try to schedule in the fun. Unless we want to, just like I mentioned before about maintaining social relationships, we want to do that for our children too. We want to work to try to support them in maintaining their social interaction. So for those of you who have access to electronics, it could be having your child play a game online with a friend. It could be FaceTiming family and friends. For those of you that don't have access to electronics, it might be sending a letter to a family member or a friend, describing how they're doing, what's going on in their lives. It could also be, like I mentioned before, stepping out and waving to a neighbor from a distance. Okay, so included on this page is a list of additional resources that can be helpful as we navigate our new normal. Here's a list of additional presentations that might provide helpful strategies, as well as some free apps that are for mindfulness and relaxation. We also have a list of resources on our MMI page. Please leave comments with any additional questions you have, and we will address those in a future presentation. Thank you for watching, everyone, and stay well.